Wagji Khalsa, Wagji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the Modern Sikh. My name is Manpreet Singh. Thank you for being with us. Today, we are going to talk about Gurduaras and the good, bad, and ugly of Gurduaras. And with me, I got Jaspreet Fateh. What's going on, man?
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I think this is going to be a good discussion because we might be on opposite ends of things here a little more than usual. Let's talk about Gurdwaras, and I really want to talk about Gurdwaras because um, it's one of those things where you're a good person if you go. So what I mean by that, because it reminds me, when I was getting married and it was a love marriage, but the parents meet and all that stuff, and they ask like, oh, you go to, oh, Manpreet, he knows a little bit about Sikhi, oh, that's great, Pagdadi, the whole thing, but do you go to Gurdwara? And I was like, no, I hardly go. I hardly go to Gurdwara. I only go for weddings, and if there's a tragedy, then I go there to be with people. Other than that, I hardly go. And they were like, this is so odd. Why don't you go? And since then, the reason I'm bringing it up because it's been over 8 years for my marriage, and they still talk about like, why aren't you going to Gurdwara? Go to Gurdwara. See, now you're gonna have a kid. Go to Gurdwara. So that's the reason I want to do. I want to talk about this too, like how Gurdwaras are failing us, failing Sikhs, failing the young Sikhs. My parents, they're in a different generation. We'll talk about that too. So let's talk about Gurdwaras. And before I get to the problems, let's talk about the word Gurdwara. The common spelling of Gurdwara is Gurdwara, right? But the institute, the Sikh Research Institute, spells it Gurdura, because most people, when they say Gurdwara, they'd be like, oh, that's Guru's door, Guru's door. But Gurdwara really, if it comes from Gurbani, it means through the Guru. So Guru, take you from darkness to light. And then in Punjabi, you say like, Ode Dware Kam Ho Reha Sada. So that's the Dwara we're talking about, is through the Guru, like via the Guru. And people don't even understand that. They just believe it's Guru, is the Guru's door. Just like house of worship, this is where we go pray. Because in America, at least, that's what happens in all the other religious institutions. So I want everyone to go look up the term Gurdwara in Gurbani and see what it really is and see what they meant by Gurdwara, which we're going to talk about too, the history of it, what's in the rat. But what are your first impressions of Gurdwara?
So, the thing is, I'm gonna make their jobs a little easier. So the Shabad that you can look up is Gurdware Hoye Soji Paisi. So, the spelling that you mentioned from Sikri, so the way it's broken down in Gurmukhi is Guru Duare. So the has an onkar underneath it. And as a fact of that, grammatically translating it to English or transliterating it to English, there's a U or a O sound that comes after the D. So it's Guru Duare, right? So that's the phonetic, linguistical aspect of that, right? The second thing is that this Shabad, the way that it talks about it is through the way that you talked about it, that through the Guru, Soji Paisi. So through the Guru, wisdom is obtained. That we gain wokeness, if you want to use my generation's words. So when that's the function of our Gurdwara, because that's the main message in the Shabad is that it's not just a place, but through that place you can also gain that utility because that place is a concentration of a specific purpose for anybody that comes there, not just Sikhs, but Sikhs in particular. When they go to such a place, should be going there to obtain wisdom through the Guru. So that's I think a good place to start the conversation because I think that look, ideas are great, talking points are great, ideologies are great, but when your actions don't match what you're talking about, then at that point we need to be critical of ourselves as a community and as people, as individuals. And so I think that's where our conversation's oriented today, is mainly at, is our actions matching what we think about and what we believe.
For sure. And the summary of this report that's on Sikri's website kind of uh, mentions why we want to talk about it too, and why we're going to talk about um, the good, bad, and ugly. But they say the goal of each Gurdwara must be to impart the Guru's worldview, articulated in Miri Piri, political and spiritual doctrine, through the appropriate mediums for the local communities they serve. In recent times, there's been a disconnect between Gurdwara governance teams and local Sangats of the Gurdwaras. So let's talk about the disconnect. Um, One of the first things, so this is going to be a little personal, but I don't go because I don't get anything out of it. You know, I get the same katha granthi, I get the same. I don't want to say kirtan. Kirtan's always different, no doubt. But you know, there's a unless there's like a crazy good ragi there, like you know, it's not packed. You know, it's just the normal people. You know, kirtan on Bollywood tunes. You know, it's things like that. So it's like I don't get anything personally out of it going, and that's like my. I'd rather read a great book on Sikh history. I'd rather study Gurbani myself and do all the references and things myself than go there because, Jay, like you said, soji paisi, right? Life's insights. I will get there. I'm not getting life's insights. The only thing I get. Let's talk about the grunties and their education. You know, we don't the grunties need to be a little more educated on Gurbani they might have, but how to communicate the message of Gurbani to the Sangat at all different levels takes skill. And so if they're not, they got to communicate to a 10-year-old child, a 40-year-old person like me, and an 80-year-old person, right? So that's what's not happening. And every time I go, it's the same thing. Come to Gurdwara, say Vaheguru's name. Things will be great for you. Things will be, it'll be good for your life. You know, come sponsor a langar. You know, they don't, so all these things. And it's like, dude, why am I like, that's not what it's for. Like, I'm like, what am I getting? What insights are you giving me? You say the same thing every week. Other, I mean, I know why people go. I know why people are going. I know why my mom goes and my dad goes. It's a little community center type thing because we don't really have Sikh community centers, at least not in New York. So I know why they go for that element too. But for me, it's like, why am I? It's like a time waste.
So I understand the concerns, and I think they're correct in their own arena, but I think we need to understand context. Um, and I'm going to say this in the most respectful way I can for our community's elders. But I think we're living in the most uneducated time of having an elders leadership than that we've ever had. Um, and I think, quite honestly, we're on the verge of, or the cusp of, needing a second Singh Sabha to take place. Because look at what happened in Singh Sabha. I don't want to go off too far into a tangent, but if you look at what happened during Singh Sabha, many Sikhs were converting to Christianity. Many Sikhs were getting pressured by colonialism to destroy Sikhi, to change the frameworks of Sikhi, to move away from Sikh spaces. And put that to today. Capitalism is running rampant in our Gurdwara, if we're being frank about it. Ananda Karaj, Khandpat, you name it, everything has a unmonetized value put to it now. And so when we're coming back into this idea of the most uneducated generation, we have to understand where it comes from. So my parents' generation, for the most part, I don't know, I can't speak to yours, but my father had to run from India because he was a Sikh alive during 1984, and that's a crime, pretty much. And so when he moved to Dubai, where I was born, um, you know, his first reaction wasn't let me learn more about Sikhi. It was more about, let me survive, let me be able to live. And then the generation before that was 1947, which, as we know, and it's well documented that a lot of our community fell into alcohol, drugs, pornography, and all of that, till Baba Janal Singh Pindrawale came through. And he was a product of 47, right? So when your leadership has been lacking for almost 50 years, when you're not really self-aware about what you're fighting for or why you're fighting for it, and your understanding of it is very superficial, then we see the problems we see today in our Gurdwara, right? So the first issue is we're not willing to admit we're not woke, quote unquote. The second issue is that we're not living to even the principles we do say we live up to. And the third thing is that you were mentioning Gyanis, Paisabs, Kathavachiks, all of that. Even they fall into a capitalistic system because the Paisab system is not historically the Sikh system at all. So as a result, when you put people's livelihoods attached to religiosity, people are going to tell you the things that you want to hear. They're never going to tell you the bitter truth. They're not going to tell you the hard things that are in Barney because, quite frankly, we've put their livelihoods on the counterbalance to speaking the truth. And so they have to be very politically savvy about how they interact with Babbe and who they talk to and who's coming into the next committee and all of that. So when that's our system, then it's very hard for us to actually speak the truth when it comes down to it. The only people that can really do that are people that have no incentive, like me and you, who have no livelihoods or no inclination to these institutions other than our feelings and sentiments towards how important Gurdwara are to the maintenance of Sikhi and to the principles of Sikhi.
Yeah, man. I mean, you said it well. You said it well. And the things that now, I'm not going to go on a rant. I say that every podcast, but I don't want to. But one of the things that I see, because people say, the elder generation say, oh, Shanti Mildiya, Mansaf Hunda, and all this stuff. And I was like, man, when I go, I don't get Shanti because I see all these things that they're doing wrong. It doesn't give me any peace. It makes me want to like say something to people and like grab them, like, what are you doing? So one of the things now, like that Gurdwaras do, which I'm not a fan of, there's a couple, and let's talk about them. One is, so, you should comply with the rat a little. I mean, I know people don't comply with rat at their own house, but this is a Gurdwara, so maybe you should comply with it there. If they're gonna come learn, maybe they'll learn something from you. But they don't do that either. And what I'm talking about is the rat of marriage. So there's marriages happening which shouldn't be happening, and we talked about this on the when we talked about gay marriage and Sikhi. But there's marriages happening that look, it does interfaith marriage and all that. That's okay. But I'm like I said, only down for one. I'm only down for one because Nathan mazak hai, and it's just ritualistic, and you're just doing it for you, not the guru. So and the Granthis, Gyanis, Gurdwaras don't do it because why? Because it's a cash cow, and I get it, I get it too. But it's like who's gonna take that stand? So that's one. The other one that kind of ticks me off is like these Akhand Paths that happen in Gurdwara. I've been to Gurdwara in New York, where Divan Hall, Guru Granth Sahib, okay, Matha Deko. Then they have a room. This is a glass room, so everybody could see what's happening too. Then they have a room. I would say about, I don't know, 15, 20 feet left of the Guru Granth Sahib there, with three other Guru Granth Sahib with Akhand Paths happening. If you just read that Atmarada, they said you shouldn't be doing that. Okay? So I've seen people do Matha Dek there, then go to the Akhand Path room, do Matha Dek there, and I'm just like, what are people doing? Like, this is what I came to see. I mean, first of all, the Akhand Path thing shouldn't be happening. And then people just matha taking to every Guru Granth, like this is not how it's supposed to be. So these are like, let's just talk about those two for right now, before I get to Langar and pictures and all these other things. What's your feeling on that? And like why? I mean, these are one of the reasons I don't go and no one does anything about it. And I pointed it out on Facebook with like a thing like this is wrong, and people are like, why is it wrong? More Bani is being read, the world is getting more healed. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry, what?
So here's a piece of Barney that I think you'll be profiting from. The Shabad is Hansa Vek Tarandia Bagape Aya Chao. So the metaphor of the Hansa is used over and over again in Barney, and one of the reasons that it's used is because the South Asian dynamic of how to understand a swan, which is a hunts, is that it lives in the mud, but it only eats pearls, right? So even though it's always surrounded by mud and it's very, very tall, it's a very tall bird. It always bows down and it always takes out the pearls and leaves the mud, right? So that's how we need to be huntsbirti. That means like the way we need to orient our minds is the way of a hunts, right? To peck at the pearls, leave the mud, right? The thing is that even in this Shabad, it talks about a different bird, which is a baga, which is kind of the closest thing I can say in English is the translation says herons, but it's kind of like a duck. And it's pretty much saying that, when these ducks see that this swan is thriving and it's flying away and it's enjoying life, it's talking about the crab mentality, like trying to pull it back down. And same thing with us, right? But the thing is, we have to stay hunts. We have to stay resolute to who we are and our true purpose here. You can't really compare it to someone else. A hunt is going to stay a hunt. A baga is going to stay a baga. We hope that it transforms, but we don't live and die on that bet. So that's that aspect of it, right? There's that personal responsibility, personal resoluteness that needs to be involved. The second thing is that I agree with you. Akhand parts can't be taking place like that because to a certain extent, and I'm be blunt here, is it's idol worship. We've turned Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj into another idol, which is unfortunate because we have not distinguished why we matha take. Matha take is not to the book, quite frankly. It's to the wisdom. It's to the Bani inside. Because Bani Guru hai Bani, which Bani Amrit Sare, not the Kitab. It's not like you can pick up any book. There's a reason why we bow our heads to Guru Granth Sahib and nothing else. And the reason is what's inside, not that it takes a form of anything. So when our mentalities are not self-reflective, like I said earlier, when we say we're not for idolatry, and then we don't understand what that actually means, and then we don't have proper discourse in this center of, gaining wokeness, then that's where the problem starts, is when we don't have proper spaces for dialogue to take place. We don't know how to have a conversation without making it personal. We're terrible at it. And that's true for all humans. I always say this, people always asking me that, did the gurus ever perform miracles? And I was like, yes, but you're not going to like the miracle I like the most. The biggest miracle any of the gurus ever did was change a person's mind. Because have you ever tried doing that? Good luck. So when there's no space for us to have discourse, when there's no space for us to properly talk about the topic without making it personal, then the problems are going to keep going on, right? That's just the simple fact of it. And so that's kind of where we're at with the whole Akhand part. Everything else, for the rest of the conversation, you're going to have to hear me say this a lot more times than once. But the reason everything is happening the way it's happening is because we can't have proper discourse. We don't have the proper spaces to facilitate and critically think and analyze these issues. And to be honest, that's the biggest reason that we go into Sangat, is to gain perspective, gain vichar, gain outlook. And going back to the topic of paisabs, even the ones that are quote unquote well learned, a lot of them we have to understand are supporters or nonchalantly talk about Hindu Brahmical ideas as well that don't properly coincide with Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj's Bani. And so even when we have quote unquote woke or well prestigious speakers, like, again, I don't have a problem with the Taksala, but you'll hear the leaders of the Taksala talk about Hanuman's Kashara being given to Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj. How is that in any way acceptable? And these are our prestigious leaders, right? And so when that's the level of our Bhai Sahibs, Kathavachiks, Vichartara Rakhan Wale Lok, like Ratband, When those are the people that are supposed to be our role models, and they're the ones saying these things, and we're not having proper discourse around it or stopping them or questioning them, and when we do, they invoke violence or threats, then what possibly could come out of that, right? So that's my answer to the question of, why is this all this going on? It's because we're giving them power and we're not fighting back.
I never knew about the Hanuman Kacha story. That's just a little funny. Okay, so I think Professor Puran Singh said this, and you kind of alluded to it. Is the Guru's genius? I don't know if you called it miracles. I'm paraphrasing here, but the Guru's genius was not creating art, but creating artists. And so the Gurdwara, should be creating artists, right? But it's not. It's creating sheep, really, if I got to put it that way. So that's one thing they don't go with the rat. They don't go with and they don't want to say anything because kanpats are cash cows, weddings are cash cows, and now let me get to langar, which is cash cows, because I've actually gone to a gurdwara where they have it while you're going down the hall, all the prices of things, of like it's like itemized list of like what types of langar you want to do and stuff like that, and here are the prices. So I was like, oh wow, okay, that's cool. See, these are reasons I don't go because it just pisses me off. And I'm like, oh God, okay, that's cool. Then I go downstairs to the Langar Hall. Then there's pictures of gurus and the famous paintings, Soba Singh's paintings or whoever's paintings of one with the milk and roti, one with the blood roti and all these things. And I'm like, why? I was like, like first of all, the picture is like inaccurate itself, but it's inaccurate in the sense that the way that they depict Guru and stuff. Like Guru Nanak was young. Like, why is he an old dude with a white beard in this picture, or what's that? Guru Nanak was young. He traveled more than I could ever travel, even on a plane, probably. Like, he just traveled, man, and he met way more people than I would ever meet. So, and you got him like this. So that's one, and it's in the Langar Hall, and it's the kids, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, and then another thing that pisses me off, and I don't know if it pisses you off, but is there's a sign on it, please do not take langar home. And people are just grabbing stuff and taking langar home. But no one's stopping them. There's no Gurdwara like committee or there's no Gurdwara people, personnel stopping them and be like, hey guys, this is not right. And I live in and these Gurdwaras aren't affluent neighborhoods. And I live in a decently affluent neighborhood myself. So when we go to these Gurdwaras, I know people ain't broke. I know people ain't poor. I know their fridges are full. I know people have 2 fridges in their house, like me. So it's like, why are we taking langar home now? It's like these types of things are always like, and my wife has been to, like, we've been to one Gurdwara. I don't know what it was for. I think it was one of, it was some birthday of some old person in my in-law family that I had to go, right? And so my wife is doing the seva and with in the kitchen and everything like that, and the ladies are doing the rotis and everything and blah blah. And the ladies did the same. I'm like, oh, that's great. And at the end, the lady's like, yeah, I want to take the rotis home, but not the old ones. I want to take the new ones that are prepared. And I'm like, and so my wife knows how I feel, and she feels the same way. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, do whatever. But I'm also like, this is people's mentality. Like, what soji are these people getting? You gotta take the roti home, and you don't want to take the old. What are you gonna do with the old roti? And I'm a weird person. I could eat a 4-day old roti. That means it's all good with me. I never need like fresh roti or anything like that. But that's because I think that's what I got from the gurus. That's what I got. Like, oh, tika, kalo, jiri mildia kalo. That's how I was taught. So it's just a weird thing. Like, okay, so now we got the pictures, we got the langar, which is all sorts of topsy-turvy and what's happening. And it's like, dude, this is not what you should be teaching. I have a daughter right now. I never want to teach her this. Oh, langar is great to go home. These are the pictures of the gurus. Oh, dad, it's in Gurdwara, so it must be right. Like, no, 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 no. That's not what I want to teach my. Just because the Gurdwara is doing it does not make it right. So, what do you think about these things?
So so before we continue, I actually wanted to elucidate something in terms of the people that are watching this. For our last few podcasts, I've seen a lot of comments. I'm not as engaged with them as you are, Manpreet Singh, but I saw a lot of people say, why are you bringing Sikhi into this? Why are you bringing Barney into this, and all that stuff? Like, if you have your opinion, have your opinion. The thing is, I'm not here to share my opinion. I have no interest in my opinion. What I care about is what the guru cares about. The guru's answer. And we're talking about a specific perspective, sure. But if you have Barney that shares an answer that is contradictory to our own, please feel free to send it in. I'm going to say that to whoever. Kulla elana. It's an open invitation to please feel free to send whatever you want, because my personal belief is iron sharpens iron. But on this specific topic, Guru Sahib says, Guru Janaka andala Sikh pi andale karma karen. So those people whose guru is blind, then their followers also do blind things. And the thing is that, what have we done with langar? Like you said that, people take langar home and all of that. And there's a few realities. And I know you'll probably disagree with me about this, but the first is, I don't know the person's personal obligations in life. I personally don't. I'm not antaryami, and I'm not omnipresent or omnipotent. I don't know people's inner thoughts, and I would like to think that it's probably better that way. So people take what they need to, and that's my personal belief. Maybe I am a little too optimistic, but I would rather give them that benefit of the doubt. The second thing is that whatever Gurdwara done to langar, they've made them special. They've made them, when ardas happens, the only thing that's supposed to get pravangi is deg, because deg is supposed to be handed out after the command, the hukamnama of the guru is given, and then we've ceremonialized it to the point where it's literally like Vaisakhi Day, because the first 5 people that are given deg are usually remembered as Pai Daya Singh, Pai Taram Singh, Pai Himmat Singh, Pai Mokam Singh, Pai Sahib Singh, when we do Pravangi. And then we hand it to Panj Rayataband Amritari Bibiyan Singhs, and then we serve it to the rest of the congregation, right? So that's the reason we do Pravangi of Deg in Guru Sahib's Hazuri, is that we are all accepting Guru's hukam, and we are what we eat, right? That's the signification, is that, we're taking in this hukam and we're accepting it. There is no place for langar there's nothing in any Ratmaryada that says we're supposed to do bhog. That is a Hindu Brahmical idea, period. And the most hilarious part is the shabad that they actually bring up to do bhog is Kari Pak Sal Soch Pavitra Hunla Vo Bhog Hararai. The actual shabad is contradicting their practice, which is of, the shabad is literally saying that clean the inside of yourself and then have Guru Sahib visit inside of you. It's not, and Guru Sahib is saying this in response to seeing a Brahman saying that Pai Lana ji shouldn't be touching his logs that he just washed, and that now he's not going to be able to cook his food because it's about to rain, and as a result he's going to be starving. And so Guru Sahib says at this place, Barse megh Sikhi kar pahune aaye. That's the shabad, that the rains are coming and my husband is coming home soon. And so when that's the mentality, we've sanctified langar to that point, then it's obvious why people take it home. They take it home like they take prashad home, because they don't have an understanding of what Kara Prashadi Deg actually is. And it's not sacred pudding like we've explained it in a Western lens, because Sikhi does not fall properly into our modern understanding of religion. It does not. In any capacity, whether you want to say monotheism, panentheism, polytheism, whatever your term is, none of it defines Sikhi well at all, because Sikhi is very different. You might want to call me biased, but check me on it. There's absolutely no term that works. And so when that's our belief system, like, you can't even, okay, one last thing on that topic. Sikhi is not secular, solely secular, and it's not even solely religious. That's the point where Sikhi has broken dynamics, because we've literally turned everything into oneness. So when that's our frame of reference, that we're so unfamiliar with this territory because we're taught a certain way in the West, or we're taught a certain way in the world, and when our leaders are not properly educated, when they're trying to appease people, when they're trying to keep their chairs or they're trying to keep their positions, then no one's willing to speak the truth. No one's willing to be sach sunai si sach ki villa, because at that moment your own skin's on the line and you're not willing to do that. Because loki ki gyange, right? So when that's all taking place, people taking langar home is for them is like, I'm taking blessings home with me for my family, which quite frankly, if you're doing that, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. And that's literally anti-Sikhi. Call me out on that. I don't care what you say, but according to Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj, there is no such thing as pavitra food. And the shabd that comes to mind on that topic is Anna Devta, Bani Devta, Basantar Devta. And you can continue looking up the rest of the shabd from there. And so when there's no such thing as sacred food in Sikhi, and we've made sacred food, we have to understand where that idea has come into us, and which is from Brahmanical ideas, which is from Hindu scriptures, which is from Hindu thought, because that's, quite frankly, the only religion that really has anything like that. We've dealt with the issue of ceremonially prepared food with halal and kosher already, with Rat Maryada saying kutha mas is fine, which is food that is not ceremonially prepared. We've already dealt with the Abrahamical aspect of that. We have not dealt well with the Brahmanical aspect of it, which is there is no such thing as sacred food, period. There is only humane food. There is only properly prepared food, which is hygienic food, which is food that's good for your health. That's the stuff we haven't dealt with, unfortunately.
And food that has ethics behind it. How are you eating this food? Did you rob a bank and buy this meal? Or you had some honest labor and now you're eating and feeding others? So, yeah, I mean, you're right. That is exactly it. It is a Brahmin thing that they think this is, they think, first of all, they think Vaheguru is taking your attendance when you go to Gurdwara. Then they're like, oh, you're bringing this food back. IJ Singh used to say that, which is true. And now you're right. They think this is like sacred food. My mom did. I've seen it, and I could only stop it in my house. I can't stop it in other people's houses where they're doing a pot and this, and then they have langar and they do the pog on the langar too, and then they bring it. I'm like, what is this for, man? What is this for? And again, people take amrit and then they do these weird things too. But I already talked about that. Anyways, so that is the langar part, which I totally agree with you. It is because they think it's sacred and they think something's going to happen. It's spiritual food. And it's not really, Langar is like my Tayaji says this. Langar, because he gets very, he does not like the term when people say dollar buffet. He hates that term. So he's like, it's not a dollar buffet. This is community coming together, community pitching in their money, community doing seva, coming together and sharing what they have with everybody else. This is not a dollar buffet. This is so he doesn't like that term, but that's what it is. That's what has happened to the youth. That's what has happened to other people because the granthis, when it all said and done, are not explaining this or enforcing this right in their gurdwaras. Okay, so that's a thing that I don't know. I still can't get over. I never get over. What do you think?
So the thing is that even on there's a counter narrative, and I want to be careful of this. There are Gurdwara in Canada where we have international students where they've put in a restriction on how many rotiyan international students can have. And I don't know about you, but I have family that are international students who don't have a lot of money because their parents literally paid huge amounts of money to send them to these countries for not only their education, which is going to cost a lot of money, but also their visas, which costed enormous heap tons of money. And so when these people are sent over here with debt, and then our Gurdwara take kind of a stance of more in line with yours, not saying that's the same as yours or yours justifies theirs, but they use your argument as a stepping stone for where they've gotten, where the people that are most affected with any type of restriction are always the poor. It's always been the truth. Whether we're talking about policy in the United States or we're talking about it even in our institutions, it's always the most disenfranchised people who are always taking the brunt end of the stick. And so that has no place in Sikhi. The problem is not the institution of langar. The problem isn't that we allow people to take food home. The problem isn't the fact that we have langar that's open to everybody. The problem is that people are using these things to the wrong ends, right? And we need to be very clear about that. I have no problem with people taking food home. I don't have a problem with people taking ingredients home, because at the end of the day, what Bani says is Dadda Data Ek Hai Sabko Devanhar Dende Totna Avi Gant Pare Pandar. The Guru Sahib's troves are filled with so much splendor that there's no end to them. And he's Guru Sahib is the giver for all of us at all times. Dadda Data Ek Hai. So our giver is one, right? And so we need to be clear and distinguish the fact that our problem is not with the institution of langar, but how it's been hijacked, maligned, and destroyed, or is constantly being destroyed. Because this idea of international students is a very new one that's come up in the last 10 years. Because before that, we never had this issue of putting quotas on a rotiyan or anything like that, or how much you give to the Gurdwara in order for you to take langar home, or calling people parasites, pretty much, because that's wrong. Across the board, that is not Sikhi. No one will agree with you. No history, no rehat, no Bani has ever said anything about that. If anything, there's evidence to the contrary, which I can mention later, but I wanted to be very clear about this.
Oh, you are clear, and I want to be clear too. You're basically talking about abusing the institutions and what they were set up for, and are just taking advantage of it and abusing it. And yeah, I'm totally against that. Look, if there's an international student and he eats 18 rotis, let him eat 18 rotis. Like, it's all good, man. It's all good. Like, this is what it's for. So, let me read, because Paikan Singh Nabha wrote many books, but his famous is Mahan Kosh, right? Satinder Sartaj's favorite book. He had where he described a Gurdwara, and there were 5 things. So now when I read these 5 things, imagine these 5 things taking place, and imagine the woke people out there, the woke Sikhs out there, the young Sikhs out there, how they would feel, because I think they would feel very good. I think they will be so happy and proud and excited, like, oh, man, look at what our Gurdwara is doing. So this is Paikan Singh Nabha, okay, early 1900s. This is describing Gurdwara. Now, what Gurdwara is and what it was. So he has 5 things: a school, so a place for spiritual learning; kitchen, a place for the hungry to fulfill their hunger; rest house, a place of shelter for travelers; hospital, a place of rest for those who are ill; and then an iron fortress, so a place of protection, especially for marginalized groups. So imagine these 5 things in Gurdwaras happening. Gurdwaras would be strong. Gurdwaras would be on the map. Gurdwaras would probably be in the news all the time. Be like, oh, look what the Sikhs are doing. But it's not, because we've deduced all that down to place of worship and langar. That's all it is. Place of worship and langar. We need to get back to this. We need to get back. But people don't read. The Grunties don't read. The Gurdwara committee doesn't care. They just want their, I don't want to get into this because this is going to be a way longer podcast, but they just want their tribal, they want their caste, they want their people to be in this Gurdwara, because maybe they're not treated in some other Gurdwara. Gurdwaras are really made. I was talking to my cousin. He's like, they're made for like the 40, 45-year-old fob. That's what they're ideal for. They're not made for me. They're not made for my daughter. They're just not made for that right now. And that's why people don't go, and that's why they're failing us. I mean, we can't even go to Paikan Singh Nabha. If you just start doing that, there'll be bale bale everywhere for the Sikhs.
A couple of things. Yes, we need to modernize our language, especially for the youth that's coming up. We don't have a lot of vocabulary for explaining these things, like I mentioned earlier. Like, I can't say that Sikhs are secular spiritual. That makes no sense to a lot of people. They don't understand, because they live in a world of dichotomies, right? But you mentioned Sartaj, and I'm actually going to bring up a different song by Bir Singh. And the song is called Changeya. And he talks about how his version of religion, his version of giving to the Guru, is different than the rest of us. And he says, Odi cheez ono hi de bira, because his name is Bir, so Bira. Bas ihsan jataunde ਆਂ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਹਰ ਟਾਣੀ ਤੇ ਫੁੱਲ ਲਾਇਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਫੁੱਲ ਚੜਾਉਂਦੇ ਆਂ. He says the one that put flowers on every single stem and every branch in the world, we pick those same flowers and throw them at his own feet and say we did something, right? Because ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ihsan jataunde ਆਂ, like look what I did for you. Guru ਸਾਡੇ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਲਈ ਭੁੱਖਾ ਨਹੀਂ. Guru's not sitting here asking us for anything. He's the giver for everybody. So why exactly are we doing all of these things? We do it for each other. We do it for our own home. We do it for every other reason except for helping humanity. Because I had this conversation with some of the committee members in my local Gurdwara, and they were like, I was like, why are you guys letting them do these reconstructions of our Gurdwara? Because during one of those reconstructions, they blew up our Gurdwara very recently. They very literally, there's a propane tank, they put it in water. The propane tank burst because there was an open fire next to it. And as a result, the entire Gurdwara has now had to go through reconstruction. And pretty much putting our community even further into issues of hardship, especially during COVID. So when I asked him that, he said, Ki kariye beta, like, the only thing that they're willing to give money for is these things. And I'm like, stop taking it, period. We don't need your danapon like that. We don't need it conditional. It's not your place to tell us how a Gurdwara is supposed to be run. Your job is supposed to be a contribution, to be a cog in the wheel, not to be dictatorial and I'm only going to give money if, you put down new carpet or whatever. Because you want your significance in the Gurdwara to be known to the community. Because we know how this conversation goes. It's going to be, oh, aaj jehdi carpet di diya na asi poi si. That's literally, quite frankly, why people do it. And so, chaudhar dikhon li. And so when that's the mentality of our community, look, everybody talks about like RSS has infiltrated our Gurdwaras, RSS has done that and this. Sure, it does a lot of things systemically, and those systemic issues are coming into our Gurdwara, and they don't need to literally come out and say we're RSS for us to understand that there are threats to our community, period. Because we also have people that were part of the Kharku Lahar of Punjab at some point that have come out who, quite frankly, some of them are sellouts. We haven't allowed them to gain reconciliation in our community. We're not willing to accept them, even if they did come out, because one of them goes to our Gurdwara. But even if they did come out, what's their options? We're not their allies. If anything, they're stuck between a hard place and a rock. And we're not willing to work with them to any end to be able to give them acceptance or give them closure or give them anything. The other day, my brother was on Clubhouse because I have an Android. And during that time, they were talking in a forum, and I heard the story of one of the panelists speak about his father. His father was part of the Kharku Lahar. And he said his best friend was arrested, tortured, and beaten. And so after a while of dealing with all of that, because time breaks us more than anything else, right? Same thing with any of our Singhs that have ever given their lives. And he said that in the end, he decided to become a cat. And as a result, he would go to people's house and kill their family members. And he said he told the government that the only condition in which I will do any of this work is if I only kill the person themselves, the male who is the infiltrator, because it's usually males, right? That are doing the fighting. Women are usually holding down the fort. And he said he killed one person, and after that he had to kill himself because he couldn't sleep at night anymore. So when that's the trauma that members of our community have gone through, and we're still not willing to actually see eye to eye with them because we think we're superior to them. These people literally lived in the jungles for over years for the liberation of Punjab. And now that they've broken down their spirits, I've known some Kharkus that are alcoholics now because they can't forget the things they saw back then. When we're not willing to, we talk about how we treat veterans in the United States, but when we talk about our own veterans, the ones that have dealt with this trauma, when we're not willing to even deal with them to any level, and our Gurdwaras are no assistance in deliberating that issue either, then Of course we're going to have infighting. Of course we're going to have vitkra. Of course we're going to have so many enemies because we're willing to be allies with no one that's quote unquote below us. We talk about Sajjan Thug, but when the Sajjan Thugs are amongst us and we're not willing to meet them with love, we want to chop their heads off. We want to kill them. Sure, to some extent I understand that sentiment, but we don't understand what Nelson Mandela said it best. He said, people that profiteer from the system are not actually profiteers, they're victims. Because there's a reason why they have to be getting profit from this. Because they themselves are being vilified by a system and incentivized by a system in order to brutalize people. And I said the same thing when we were talking about the farmers morcha, that, you know, our people, like the Delhi police would not be doing the things that Delhi police is doing if they weren't being paid. Let's be very clear about this. And it's the same thing here. If these people weren't getting paid the millions of billions of dollars that are getting funneled into the United States to start their very lucrative businesses, a lot of these people would not be doing the things they're doing. And so we need to de-incentivize all of this. We need to give them an out. We need to be patient. We need to do all of these things. But until we get our Gurdwara back, we're not going to be able to do any of this. And that's why I went on our Twitter rant last night. Look, ਸਾਡੇ ਪੈਰ ਭੁੰਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਣ ਦਿੰਦੇ. They're not letting our feet touch the ground, because if our feet touch the ground, they know what happens with Sikhs. We start running. And we do a very good job, but we need to start deliberating properly before we do anything else as a community.
All right. Well, thanks for that rant. That was crazy. But it reminded me of the famous line of, Pehla Singh pakke si, Gurdware kache si. Hun Gurdware pakke hai, Singh kache hai, and that's what it is. So we don't have that much time. We have to wrap up in like 5 minutes, but I do want to, and I didn't want to put this to the end, but another thing that Gurdwaras don't show, and we say it everywhere, is women. Where are the women heading these Gurdwaras? Really, where are they? Where's the women grunties? Where's women doing her das? Like, we always say that women are equal, we're all treated equal. They're just in the kitchen. Really, they're in that's all they are. That's where are they in the committees? Are they 50-50 in the committees? They're 50% of the population of the world, right? So these are the types of things. Like, you could talk a big game and you could say your Gurdwara is doing this and the Sangat is powerful and this and that. Sangat ain't powerful. And so to some it's the women too. Everyone's, because like I said, everybody's sheep here. And that the Gurdwara is not creating artists. So that's another thing. Like, so I have a daughter, like, oh, my daughter could do anything, right? So could she be grunty? Like, at this Gurdwara? Because she's never seen one. So they get all like, they will all get, brainwashed into thinking, oh, the men run this institution. So where are the women? And I don't see them. I don't see them step up. There's been problems with women being panch pyare, even though that was solved. And then people bring up, I don't want to diss him or anything, but people bring up when we do these videos, what are you guys doing? Especially on TikTok, watch basics of Sikhi and this and that. I'm like, yo, dude, he's not all right either. I didn't like his stance on panch pyare and women. I mean, read it. I mean, just the Rat has already done it. So where are the women in these Gurdwaras taking prominent roles in committees, taking secretary roles, speaking, doing ardas, being the grunty? Where are they? Where are they? Because until that happens, it's all a bunch of like, yes, I see it, and this. No, you're not. No, you're not. You just want me to sponsor a langar and do an akhand path, which is not happening.
Thing is that the Taksal, if you read the Taksal Rat Maryada, which is their own Rat Maryada, and the same, almost the same thing with the Dals, Nahang Dals, is that but I'll talk about Taksal. They have a specific passage in the Rat Maryada that says when a woman is menstruating, that they're not supposed to touch Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj and say that tabya. Asadivar literally has an entire shakka on Sutak, which is literally the practice of making women seem impure when they're going through their menstrual cycle. So again, I said this earlier too about Baba Hanuman's Kashara, and now I say it again about this issue as well. We do have absolutely no understanding, no want, no need, no desire, no place for Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj except for our own agendas. That's why Sikhs will say Sikhs for Trump, Sikhs for Biden, Sikhs for Kamala Harris, Sikhs for justice, Sikhs for quote unquote whatever. Look, at the end of the day, I am fine with any of that, but show me where in Barney your belief exists. Show me where there's a place for you to say, make your argument against socialized medicine. Go ahead. I dare you, I beg you, show me the precedent. And there is none. Even the people that were in the comments, and I said this earlier, show me where in Barney, in Rahat, in Tawariq, these things, these practices that you hold so dear to yourself, because even Buddha Dal has havans now, which is literally them having spiritual fires in front of Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj and cracking coconuts open. Tell me how that's not Brahmical. Tell me how that's not Hindu idolatry. Tell me how any of this has a place in Sikhi. There is no place. Because these people are not willing to be critical. They're not willing to deliberate. They're not willing to have discussion. Look, for the Sikh, Shastras are important. I understand that. I have a 15-inch kirpan off my left pocket all the time. I wouldn't be wearing that if I didn't think that it was important. But the kalam, the mind, is the first weapon that needs to be refined in all of us. And we're quite frankly not willing to do that. And also on the issue of feminism in leadership positions. The issue is that when women get involved into leadership positions at our Gurdwara, we create these double standards of they need to be proper, they need to have the proper vidya, they need to have the proper etiquette, they need to have the proper understanding. And my question to them is, where did this suddenly come from? I agree with you, but where is that for the men? There is no such thing. And going back to the topic we talked about when we were talking about gay marriage, I was actually thinking about this the other day. The reason that people always want the perfect figure, the perfect role model to become the first person to do something or go through a barrier is because of a conservative framework. Because they don't want change, they come up with excuses for why that change should not occur. So they character assassinate, they go after other things, they come up with irrelevant details about people's lives and livelihoods, and that's why women aren't allowed. So quite frankly, until we have a standard that's universal for men and women, I personally believe there should be quotas put in place at these gurdwara to make sure that women are in these positions. Because I would disagree with the quota system and say the best person should be running the gurdwara, best people should be in those positions. But until that's what I see in practice, shut up. Respectfully, shut up. You have no understanding and no actual want for people to be the best at their positions. All you care about is people having a penis for running a gurdwara. I'm not holding back any punches at this point because it's a really annoying. But anyways, for the sake of time, that's my closing remarks as well. I don't know what you think, Manpreet Singh.
No, thanks, man. Yeah, so I just want people to realize when you guys go to Gurdwara now, why don't you read the Ret, read what they're actually be supposed to be doing, and maybe you'll get an awakening too and be like, oh, this is not supposed to be happening, and this is wrong, and maybe I want to reform it, and maybe I don't want to come. I have like a silent boycott. I just don't go. My parents are always like, go, because maybe you could change the system and be in the committee. I'm like, they don't want me in the committee. As soon as I start saying things, they're like, get this guy out of here. He's going to mess up our whole system. So I'm like, why even deal with that? Anyways, go to Gurdwara, and when you do, point out these wrong things. Point it to your parents. Teach your kids the right way or whatever it is. And one of the things that we didn't get to either is we started worshipping the Guru Granth Sahib instead of reading it. And that is the biggest detriment that's happening in Gurdwaras. They want you to worship it. That's why they put it up so high. They put it up so high because they're like, oh, what is this thing? Can I read it and touch it? Yes, you could. It was made for every single person on this earth. So, but the Gurdwaras don't teach you that, Like you go to any historical Gurdwara, it's not that high up. Just let's take the most famous one, Harmandir Sahib. It's right there. It's like eye level. It's like because you could touch it, you could feel it, you could be close to it. It's for everybody. So, anyways, these are the things that I hope people think about when they go to Gurdwara, when they go to these institutions. Like, are they doing stuff that is in accordance with Bani, Tawariq, Rat, and all these things? So, hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope everybody we'll go to Gurdwara and think a little differently and maybe change up course. But if you have any comments, questions, concerns, like he said earlier, definitely give us a shout, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.